Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday to you. It's funny to say I can't say happy Monday today. This is a really sad text that we're looking at this morning. I'm Tim Harris. This is 10 with Tim, and we are in 2 Samuel chapter 18, verses 19 to 33. When we left off on Friday, Absalom was dead. Absalom is the son of King David, and he was an enemy son, and it was a devastating story and a devastating battle where Absalom was killed. Remember, David had commanded, it was his one command, that he wanted everybody to deal gently, to take it easy on the young man Absalom. He said he wanted them to deal gently. In other words, don't hurt Absalom. But Absalom was the leader, the commander of the enemy army. And so David is in this very complicated place between being the king of Israel and being the father of Absalom. And so now the news must be brought to David that Absalom is dead. Absalom has been killed. And so this is what the story picks up in verse 19. Now, Zadok's son, again, Zadok's a priest, and we've been watching these awesome sons of the priest, Jonathan and Ahimaaz. And so Ahimaaz here, he decides that he wants to run and tell, notice what he says, I want to go tell the good news. I want to tell King David good news. He's young, he's fast, he's impressed with the victory, and he wants to be the one to go tell the king good news. But see, that's the problem. Is it good news or is it bad news? It's complicated, right? It's good news for the nation of Israel because the enemy of the nation, the enemy of the throne, the leader of the revolution, the enemy of the king has been killed. That's good news. But David is a father and his son is dead. And the news that Absalom is dead is not going to be good news to David. So it's good news for David the king, it's bad news for David the father. And Joab understands this. Now, remember how the book of 2 Samuel started? Because we did it together. Chapter 1, in the big climax of chapter 1 of 2 Samuel, David kills messengers, who bringing a message that he doesn't like, right? So David can do that. If he doesn't like the message, he can kill the messenger. He'll flat do it. He's done it before. And Joab knows he'll do it. So Joab's in a spot because remember, David's specific command to Joab was to deal gently with the young man Absalom. So Joab recognizes that the news going back to King David is news that one way or the other implicates him. The young man Absalom is dead. So Ahimaaz, he's kind of young, clueless, like, yeah, I'm going to go tell good news. And Joab says, listen, kiddo, it's not going to be good news to David. It's not going to be good news. But Ahimaaz is just so determined. He just really wants to go. But understand, Joab can't. Ahimaaz is the son of the priest, another high-ranking official, and Joab knows this is a risky mission. You really don't know how the king will respond to this news. So Joab refuses to send the son of the priest. Instead, he just chooses a man from Ethiopia. It's a random guy, and random is important. He's not connected to anybody. He also doesn't know anything. He doesn't know the command to deal gently with Absalom. He doesn't know of Joab's disobedience. He doesn't know any of this. He's just going to follow the orders, and he doesn't even know the risk he's taking. So Joab sends the man from Ethiopia, and the man from Ethiopia runs off with the message. But Ahimaaz continues to stand there going, no, please, I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. And so eventually Joab lets him go as well. I don't know why Joab gives up and lets him go. I don't know if Ahimaaz just wears him out. I don't know if the young man now understands the risk, and so Joab figures if you know what you're risking, then you can go. Or I don't know if Joab just figures the Ethiopian has a head start now, and so Ahimaaz is never going to get there first, but he gets there first. Now again, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny because Ahimaaz is just a kid, right? And so he gets there first because he's young and he's fast and he knows the shortcut. Like he called an Uber and he got there faster. And he gets right there, runs straight up to the king and says, everything's good. Everything's all right. I mean, this kid is so dumb. He's just so dumb. Everything is all right. And the king says, so what about the young man Absalom? What about the young man Absalom? Is he all right? I mean, Ahimaaz just said, everything's all right. And the king only has one question, but what about Absalom? Is he all right? Ahimaaz replies, gosh, when Joab told me to come, man, it was really loud in there, and there's a lot of commotion, and I don't know. I never asked that. No, he's lying. He's lying. I mean, Joab clearly says, the king's son is dead. Like, they have that conversation. But in the moment, I mean, this kid was so eager to bring the news, but then when he gets there and he stands in front of the king and the king says, what about my son? I mean, he chickens out. He totally chickens out. This news he was so eager to deliver, when the moment comes, he just can't bring himself to say it. And so he takes the coward's way out. He says, I forgot to ask about Absalom. I don't know that part. He is a coward, and so becomes irrelevant to the story now. The Ethiopian arrives. And again, the Ethiopian doesn't know any different. He doesn't know necessarily anything other than the news he is sent with. And so he walks right up to the king, and the king says, what about young Absalom? Is he all right? What about young Absalom? Ethiopian replies, may all of your enemies, my lord the king, both now and in the future, share the fate of that young man. The Ethiopian delivers that message to the king, who will be pleased to know that his enemy has been defeated. May all of your enemies be as that young man. It's that word enemy that just sort of hangs there, right? May have been the enemy of the king, but David's a father too. And we've seen David mourn before. We've seen David mourn when Jonathan died, when Saul died. We've seen David mourn, when the young infant born of Bathsheba died, the nameless infant that he grieved. But we've never seen anything like this grief. May all your enemies become as that young man. Enemy and young man. David's been calling him young man. What about the young man Absalom? Deal gently with the young man Absalom. He's never brought himself to say the word son for a while, but in this moment, it's what he says over and over and over. My son, my son, my son, my son. His son was his enemy. His son was a young man. But at this point, David's just a father. And the grief is naked, and it is barren, and it is without comfort. My son, my son, my son, my son. Just devastating. I mean, y'all know how worked up I've gotten in the story because of David's failures as a father. I mean, it was just really difficult to watch David, the man after God's own heart, the man of righteousness and loyalty and integrity, become a man we could hardly recognize. And we said over and over how the sin of David was now brought into the story of his family, and part of the consequences of David's sin. Although God forgives him graciously, the consequences were going to remain in his family forever. And this is where this story ends. I mean, how many sons is David going to bury? I mean, just incredibly heartbreaking to me. And it's just that cry, my son, my son, my son, my son. At this moment, the nation Israel and those who are loyal to David, they're in a very different place. They're rejoicing the victory over the enemy. They're rejoicing over the death of the commander of the revolutionary army. But all David can say is, my son, my son, my son, my son. Wow. Well, Joab arrives in chapter 19, and that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 1 to 23. David is a father, but he's also a king. And Joab's going to have to come and remind David that he has a responsibility to his people. That's where we pick up tomorrow. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 1 to 23. Gosh, today, and it's just so sad. But I love the word of God. Isn't it? I mean, for all of its sadness, isn't it just the best story and the most human moment? And I love the way the word of God just shows us people of faith in all of their failures and in all of their triumphs and in all of God's faithfulness. God is so good to David. And even with all that being said, David's heart is broken. I love you guys. I will see you tomorrow. Have a happy Monday and stay in the Word. And I'll see you in the morning at 10 o'clock for Tim with Tim. I love you guys. I'll see you.